Internet, hello. Okay, you may recognize these lines that you don't understand what they are from SeaBas's coaching. This uh, clip, I guess it's a clip, two clips, is from SeaBas. I'm not sure if he posted this anywhere. I did get permission from him to use it, hence his very cool logo up on the right. I should ask him who did that because I want one. Anyways, so I'm gonna try to help y'all make sense of this. And in the process, Neil, I'm going to throw you under the bus. Please tell us how the underside of that thing is doing. My apologies. Hopefully, this is all in good fun. I think Neil will agree that he throws much better than myself, but he does not throw as well as Jasper Till, who is on the right, demonstrating some exceptional mechanics for us. Okay, so what do these lines mean? The orange line is the placement of the left toe, essentially, and then a vertical line arbitrarily from that point. The right line is the placement of the right toe, and then a vertical line from that point. That's what SeaBas did. I am going to try to help you understand what those things mean and how that relates to the way that I coach and what Neil is doing a little bit differently than Jasper that we might want to do more like Jasper. That's what I coach towards. So again, thank you, SeaBas, for pointing this out. We've all known for a long time that we want to butt wipe as per the butt wipe drill from SeaBas. How exactly to execute that has not been entirely clear. I feel like just this week, I unlocked a more complete understanding of that. My interpretation of it before was a little bit flawed. Now I think it is very much less so, mostly thanks to this clip. So thank you, Andrew, for throwing this together for us. And thanks to Kenneth for sharing it on my Discord and bringing it to my attention for the first time. Okay, let's jump in. Yeah, there's no sounds. We don't got to mute it. So we'll play momentum step or initial step, X step. So we see there both orange lines on the toe, Neil on the left, Jasper on the right. Let's look at Neil first and see what Neil is doing. So as Neil shifts his weight from that point, his toe is on the red line. His hip, nope, excuse me, I don't know colors. His toe is on the red line. His right hip is on the left side of, did I say the wrong line again? Orange. His toe is on the orange line, officer. So he's setting up here, toe on the right, hip just on the left when he gets his X step established. And then he goes forward. Oh, the red line is heel, not toe. Okay. So then he gets here when by the time he gets his brace established, his rear hip is in the center of the two lines, essentially. From this point, he's going to clear his front hip as much as he does. That's pretty good. So he gets his accordion zigzag thing going on here. His hips have switched sides. Pretty good hip motion. Not a lot of counterbalance in the rear foot. The rear foot went from here to there. So the leg is staying southeast in this case. Neil throws pretty darn well. He's not getting his leg stuck south, but his leg does get stuck southeast. So he's not really counterweighting. His spine lines up with his rear leg, and his spine goes northwest while his leg stays southeast. So we can look at this in terms of quadrant theory and cut him in half this way and this way. So he put a ton of energy here. There is no energy here because the foot is just staying in that spot. So the foot is immediately going to go into follow through. So the foot immediately goes left into its follow through arc. Nothing wrong with throwing that way, but it's not optimal. So back to the beginning, what the issue here is that Neil is shifting his weight from orange line directly to red line. So the weight shift is that way, from orange to red. So if we were to look from a camera angle that looks through the orange line directly to the red line, so orange line is here, red line is right in the same spot, we would see Neil exist on that line, shifting on that line. Burp, burp, burp. So he's shifting here. His weight is going at the front foot. And you can tell that because his hips are on that line. His shoulders are a little bit this way of that line because he has a good hyzer lean. But the weight of his hips is going right at the front foot. Okay, so let's see what Jasper is doing. So Jasper gets his foot down on boop, orange line. And immediately thereafter, so as soon as his foot gets down, let's compare. Neil's rear hip. Jasper's rear hip. So he's got Neil's here, Jasper's here. So he has a lot more hip hinge, I believe is what SeaBas would call this. He's bending his hip a lot more. Neil has his hip kind of bent, but his femur is vertical, whereas Jasper has this 30-ish degree angle and more knee bend. So Jasper's left hip is significantly further east. Let's see how that moves forward. So Neil is going to shift his rear hip towards his red line. And what's Jasper going to do? Jasper sends his hip goes onto the orange line. So his hip starts right of the orange line, goes to the orange line. So it's going not exactly targetward, but it's going generally targetward. It's not going dead straight parallel to his target line, but it's reasonably close to that. Jasper is not shifting his weight at his red line. At least you could look at it as the weight of his left side is going more targetward, not at the front foot. So this is my 3 rails theory. I want you to think about shifting the weight targetward. So you're not going to shift your weight directly at your front foot. You're going to shift your weight a little bit behind your front foot, which is going to help your hip motion. So let's play forward from here. So Jasper keeps his right hip on the orange line much longer until his brace gets down. And as his brace gets down, then his rear leg starts moving right because now the front hip is clearing up and back, which makes space for the rear hip to come down and forward, continue rotating around the pivot point that is the front hip. So front leg straightens, weight goes into the heel. We end up with the same hip switch where now we're looking at the back pockets, whereas we were looking at the front pockets before. The left hip now is a little bit on the left side of the space between the 2 lines. Now the right hip has taken the spot where the left hip used to be, so the hips just switched. This is the point where I realize that I have just drawn a man's butt on the internet and I reconsider my life choices, but here we are. So the biggest difference between Neil is Neil just put a ton of energy here and didn't really put any energy here. So the foot just swings around. limiting the amount of containment we can get from the brace. So we immediately go into not a spin out, but quickly go into follow through with some significant amount of energy, spinny energy in the rear leg going past the brace. Whereas Jasper puts a ton of energy into the disc, same, but he's also putting energy here, going this way. So remember, the foot started here. Foot starts here. Let's go find that. Not that foot. The other foot. Foot starts right there. Toe, ground contact. Brace gets down, front hip clears, rear hip continues forward, moving left, moving west. Rear foot goes east and a little bit north. Boom. So I feel like I've been saying this for a very long time and no one's really picked up on it. Nobody really seems to super care a bunch. SeaBas has talked about this. He talked about it in ButtWipe drill. He says your foot should kick through the wall. Your rear foot should kick through the wall. But I don't feel like that's been emphasized in his coaching. And here we see someone throwing like maybe not faster than anyone else, but certainly up there. And very much using a counterweighted rear leg mechanic. So this is what I'm talking about. Putting a lot of energy there and putting a lot of energy here, boom, going that way to counterbalance quadrants. Force here, force there. That makes balance around the center, which lets you put more force into the brace. Remember, the whole point of the lower body in this new model is we're going to transfer linear momentum down the T-pad through a brace into rotational torque in the hips. So balancing force here with force here allows us to put more force into the brace, which allows us to convert more of our linear momentum into hip torque, which allows us to throw farther. So that's the whole point. So this is all like ButtWipe mechanics. The problem is understanding exactly what ButtWipe is and what ButtWipe is not. So my understanding of ButtWipe was not complete. I wouldn't say it was incorrect, but I would say it was not complete. So I was thinking about ButtWipe as just as you're going to your brace, you want to turn your hips counterclockwise to wipe your left glute on the wall this way. So I'm not just falling and wiping my butt in an arc. I'm actually turning my belt buckle backwards as I do that. I thought that was it. You turn, you're good. You wiped your butt, everything's good to go. Now I think it's not quite that simple because Neil is doing that, but I don't think that's the whole motion. So here you can see Neil get onto his rear foot, and then his belt buckle comes towards us there as he goes to his brace. But he's still shifting his weight at his front foot, whereas Jasper is shifting his weight, at least in his left foot, more towards the target, less at the front foot. So, check my notes, make sure I got all this. Yeah, I think so. Okay, so put that in the context of my post-to-post drill, and then we'll look at how we can add a ButtWipe to that, not quite the right way, and then how I think we add ButtWipe to that in a way that is more productive, that creates the rear leg counterweight motion that we want. So, post-to-post is just here. Go watch that video. I'm on my rear post. I switch to my front post. I straighten my front post, and my hips move 90 degrees. So what we're doing here is we're translating linear momentum, in this case from a simple weight shift, into hip torque because of ground force, because of the brace. So here I'm on my back post, my rear leg is straight. My left hip is high. I'm hanging my right hip down low from my left hip. I switch my weight, straighten the front leg. My right hip comes up. My left hip goes down where I'm hanging my left hip as low as I can from my right hip. This is intentionally collapsing your hips, which is not the greatest motion you can do. Do not do this as hard as you can. Do not do this hard at all. Do this slow and controlled. This is a static drill. You're just feeling the potential range of motion. You will jar your glute medius when you do this. Don't do it hard. But this is what I'm doing. I'm getting this motion here. Boom. So what's not quite right about this is I'm just shifting my weight at my front foot. I'm here, I'm tipping all my weight at my front heel, boom, and then letting my hips shift. So if we add a butt wipe to that and do it not quite right, I'm just going to think about as I'm shifting onto this foot, I'm just going to turn my hips counterclockwise. Boom. It starts to make the right hip motion. So that's already warmer. We're getting better. But what we want to add is we don't want to send our weight that way. We want to send the weight of this hip that way into the back wall. So if I do that, if I just do that and don't worry about the front, I'm going to let this hip fall directly into that wall. So I'm just going to go boom, and this hip is going to keep going through the wall. When I do that, watch what happens. Rear hip, shift, let the hip fall into the wall. Boom. The leg redirects more. Because the momentum and the intent in this left hip was going straight into the wall, I have momentum going that way. When that momentum in the left hip going towards the wall is replaced with the right hip, boom, the intent of the rear leg to go that way is kind of still followed by the leg. So there's another thing that happens here. This is like armchair physics. It's probably not an accurate description of what would happen in terms of a physics model, but it works for a mental model. So the other thing that's happening here is I'm in a Superman punch mode. I'm going to make this go forward by making this go backwards. Boom. So my pelvis goes forward. My left side of my pelvis goes forward. My left foot goes backwards. Boom. That makes the shoulder go forward. So everything's equal and opposite. The foot goes back, the fist goes forward. The hip goes forward relative from the shoulder to the knee. I'm sending my hip forward. Boom. That sends the foot backwards, sends the shoulder forward. I can send the arm forward from the shoulder. Same thing happens in this. I'm here, I'm loaded into the hip. When the hip goes forward, either because I'm firing the glute or as a reaction because the front hip is clearing. Front hip clears, rear hip goes forward. Leg has an equal and opposite reaction and goes east. So this is the accordion, this is the crumple zone. 1, 2, 3, 4 goes to 1, 3, 2, 4, and 4 moves further east. So that's a lot. But the main point that we're trying to get to here is the butt wipe is not just a turn, but it's the intention to send your left hip towards your target line, essentially. So as usual, Coach Blitz has a way of explaining this that is simpler than anything that anyone else came up with, which is why we appreciate his coaching so much. So his cue for this is send your left shoulder at your right foot. I'm not entirely sure I completely agree with that, but it gets the same thing done. I might say send your left shoulder at the target. So already we're dealing with a blitz hyper amount of coil, which is great. Love it. If you can do that, do it. But then he's thinking about sending his left shoulder at his right foot. boom, which sends your left hip targetward. And then you end up getting the same motion in the rear leg. So I like Blitz's cue. I appreciate SeaBas's cue, but it's very hard to understand. And I feel like I interpreted it wrong. So now my understanding of ButtWipe is I want my left hip to be going targetward. I want it to have momentum that way so that when I clear my front hip, boom, my rear hip is allowed to go into javelin mode and continue forward. And specifically, my left foot redirects on its own passively to move in a generally eastward, potentially northeastward direction, which gets me quadrant balance because I put a ton of force, boom, here. And I want to balance that, boom, here. So there I have balance. Top left quadrant, lower right quadrant. Balanced force going this way allows me to put more force into my brace, which allows me to create more hip torque, which gets me more arm speed. So hopefully that helps you understand how we want the rear hip to move more and how we set up the hip clear to cause more torque. Okay, if you're still here, you're probably one of us. Go check out the Patreon and please signal boost this. Send this video to all of your friends because I really think it'll help a lot of people to be able to conceptualize what we want our hips to do. Thank you to Neil for letting SeaBas use your video. Thank you to Jasper for throwing so dang far so that we can see your mechanics. And thanks to Andrew for putting this together in the first place and letting me use it. All right, Internet. See you later.